I think the thing to your point that's really interesting about Foo Fighters is they don't really base the whole song around the riff. They sort of use the riff to complement the song.
Welcome back to Foo's Files, the podcast for fans of the Foo Fighters. Hope you're all doing well. Now, this week we're going to have a little bit of a guitar nerd out, which is quite timely because you might have seen that Dave Grohl's original custom Gibson 335 has gone back on the market. It's the prototype guitar he played from 2005 to 2007, around the Echoes, Silence, Patience and Grace era, before the official models were released by Gibson. But yes, Skylight Guitars in Bakersfield, California eventually came into possession of this original, and it's now gone up for sale, a snip at $300,000. So anyway, I'd got this week's episode lined up with Jeremy Jacobs, aka Jeej, who is a regular listener to this show, a musician and a content creator who does a lot of deep dive videos into the Foo Fighters guitar stuff. And not only did he have some really insightful things to say about it all, but he also plugs in his version of the DG335 to demonstrate some of the riffs that we talked about, as you'll hear. I'll clip some of those segments up as videos too for the Foo's Files Instagram page, so you can get the full experience. But yeah, Jeej, he's an awesome player and really good at dissecting and analysing these guitar parts in a far better way than I ever could. So, hope you enjoy our conversation. Welcome to the podcast, a long-time listener, musician and Foo Fighters fan. Jeej, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Light 'em up, Dan. Can we call you Light 'em up, Dan? Now is that your new name?
No, I'll take that. I should have used that, before. But
there you go. There you are.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah. So yeah, we've been talking for a while and said we're going to get together and have a bit of a nerd out about guitars and the Foo Fighters and stuff like that. And we picked an interesting week because Dave's prototype Gibson's gone back up for sale, hasn't it? So if anyone's got a spare $500,000 down the back of the sofa to they can buy it. So
we got to figure out some way to do like a grassroots campaign where we all pitch in, $20, you pitch in a few quid from overseas, and then we just it's the sisterhood of the traveling DG335, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
we can split that cost among like 1,000 of us or something.
Yeah, we'll start the crowdfund here. So yeah. Do you want to tell us start with about your music and your YouTube channel as well?
Yeah, man, for sure. I mean, obviously, I've been a guitar player for a very long time. I've been a Foo Fighters fan for a very long time. And I've got a YouTube channel. I've just been having a lot of fun over the years making little videos here and there and talking about guitars, nerding out about gear and stuff, talking about Foo Fighters. And, recently I've been having a lot of fun kind of making some more Foo Fighters focused videos. But aside from that, I just kind of sit down here in my little basement studio and I write and record music and put out a lot of stuff kind of as a solo effort. I mean, I don't put a ton of energy behind it, but it's there. It exists under Jeej, which is a lot of fun, to collect all this gear down here and just make a lot of noise in the basement.
Yeah, the listeners won't be able to see your impressive little studio setup you've got in the background. You've got a nice selection of guitars, but also, interestingly, over your left shoulder, there's an old gas can known as...
The can.
Yep, the can, which people might know. It was a similar one, a replica that was largely used on the first Foo Fighters record, and you've done quite a deep dive into this, haven't you?
Yeah, I put out a video a couple months ago about it, and I had been kind of researching this for a while because, I mean, as we'll get into in this conversation, like, I totally geek out about the gear and stuff that's used to record songs that I like. And so, I really got into the first the debut self-titled Foo Fighters album a few years ago. And I love the sound of that record, right? And there's just such a unique sound to that that's not really present in any of the other albums in their discography. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but there's a couple of songs in particular that just had this grindy, awful sounding, like fizzy guitar tone, like Weenie Beanie and Exhausted are the two that come to mind. And so I was always curious, like how are they getting that sound? And there just wasn't a lot of information about it. I mean, there were a couple interviews from like Dave and Barrett, and they're talking about this gas can amp. And I'm like, what the hell are they? Is this something they made, or is it like a real thing? Apparently, these amps were built in the 80s. They did a run of them in around St. Louis. And, you know, from what I've heard, ever since posting that video, there's a lot of guys that are like, oh, no way. Like, that was my first little practice amp. It's just a crummy little... It's basically a battery-powered amp that's built into a plastic gas can, but it has this gnarly sound, right? And I got lucky enough, and I found one on my local Facebook marketplace, and I started making this video, and I had the opportunity to talk with Barrett Jones. I reached out to him, and I was like, dude, I found one of these amps. And he's like, no way, I've never seen anybody else come across one. And got to have an awesome interview chat with him. You've gotten to talk with Barrett. He's just such an awesome dude. He's such a nice guy, and he's so willing to kind of dive into some of that nerd stuff too, which was great. So, but yeah, the can, what an interesting little saga that I've fallen into with that crazy amp.
Yeah, there can't be many of those still in existence, if there were ever many in existence. So
here's what I found out. So originally, the number that I heard from the factory is they made about 10,000 of them, which seems like a lot. But it's from the 80s. I bet half of them are probably sitting in people's garages collecting dust, being mistaken for a real gas can, right? But so I've been scouring ever since that video came out, and I'm very happy to say, luckily, it's got quite a lot of attention on YouTube, at least by my standards. And I've been like trying to see, like, are we going to have any effect on the market here? Like, is somebody going to realize what they have and what this is now and try and sell it for big money? So I've been searching like on Reverb, trying to see if anybody's selling them. And one of these came up for sale a month ago, and the guy listed it for $1,000. And I was like, no way, was that me? Like, have I manipulated the market? So I don't know for sure. I mean, that was kind of my intent with it. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if this little gas can turned into the next like PV Decade, which is that little amp that Josh Homme used for all the Queens of the Stone Age stuff. So I don't know. I haven't seen any other ones come up for sale, but I've been trying to kind of bully Barrett. I've been gently prodding him that he needs to like tear his apart and reverse engineer it and like build his own replica and start selling them.
The thing is, like, as you said, they go back to the 80s, but part of the reason that they're not many available is they do look at, if you push them a bit too hard, they could just easily blow up. So that's probably happened to a few of them that are out there.
I'm sure, yeah. There's not much to it. It's got 4 knobs on it and a tiny little speaker. And what I've been telling Barrett he needs to do is, his studio is called Laundry Room Studios. I'm like, you need to find the components for this, make a replica of it, but then instead of a gas can, you need to house it in those Tide Pod containers. Have you seen those? The big plastic Tide jug things. Put a speaker in that. The Laundry Room Signature Edition. I'm like, we could go into business together, man.
And that's like, so they were made in St. Louis, so that's not a whole long way from where you are, is it? So it's probably in its whole time in existence, that amp, it's probably not travelled far around the United States, has it? From where, if it's got somewhere from a point A in a factory in St. Louis to sort of you in Iowa now. So,
well, and what's really interesting after talking to Barrett, because he lives in Seattle, which is clear out on the West Coast, and I asked him about his. I was like, where'd you find it? He was in London. He was in London at a guitar store, and that's where he bought his. So who knows, man? Some of them made him overseas, but yeah, no, it's crazy to wonder, like, where's this little thing? Where are all the other ones? That people have no idea that's the sound of the first Foo Fighters record.
Yeah, there'll be somebody in the world somewhere who's cleared out their parents' garage or something, and they've found this thing and just taken it to a skip and thrown it away because they've just thought it's a piece of old junk, probably.
Yep, exactly. It belongs in a museum.
Yeah, exactly. As sad as it sounds, but you don't know what's under your nose sometimes, do you? So,
Or
um, yeah, what we're going to do for this episode is talk about the best Foo Fighters guitar riffs. So we could be here for quite some time, but I asked you to pick your top five, and I picked my top five, and we actually went for two of the same ones, which
Mhm.
is good. So, first of all, I was going to just ask you what your kind of criteria was for picking your five. But the reason I ask you is because this sounds like a bit of a strange statement that to make, but they're not they're not as much of a riff heavy band as you think they are, because there's a lot of, in a pure sense of it, there's a lot of interesting and unusual like chord progressions and choppy
Mhm.
sort of chord progressions. But in
Mhm.
terms of like pure riffs that drive the song, they're not as dominant in the Foo Fighters catalog when you think about it as you might think.
Right. No, I totally get that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you compare them to like, well, use Ozzy as a perfect example. I mean, they don't have necessarily like a Crazy Train or, to use Black Sabbath, like there's not an Iron Man. I mean, there's a few of those here and there, but I think the thing to your point that's really interesting about Foo Fighters is they don't really base the whole song around the riff. They sort of use the riff to complement the song, right? They're all written to just serve the song better. So, I mean, to answer your question about how I curated the list, I mean, basically my criteria was I wanted to try and span the entire discography as well as I could, which is kind of difficult in 5 songs. But, I mean, get something from the early days, some mid stuff, some newer stuff. But then also I wanted to kind of avoid picking songs like Everlong, which has been discussed to death, which is an amazing riff. It's a great song, fantastic riff, but I think there's been enough spoken about it already. So I tried to pick some kind of deeper cuts. There's one on here that's a super deep cut that I think a lot of people maybe aren't even aware exists. But yeah, that was kind of my criteria. I wanted some stuff that was sort of, a little more unknown to casual fans, but still had really great guitar work that I thought was kind of a standout highlight part of the song.
It's funny though, the Everlong, the notion of, yeah, that's been talked to death. The one
Hmm.
thing I would say about it, the feature of Everlong, is that, and this is where we're going to start to annoy the sort of non-guitar nerds here.
Uh-huh.
It, Drop D is it's like a Dave Grohl signature, isn't it? In
Yeah.
in so many of these songs in this that we've got in this list here,
Hmm.
it's the drop D. It's like a go-to, isn't it, for Dave
I
on?
think, yeah, I think 3 of the ones on my list are in drop D, or at least I play them in drop D. But no, actually, well, and this may be a good segue to introduce this, but for this podcast, and hopefully it comes through for your listeners, okay. But I have my guitar hooked up, and I just kind of wanted to showcase, a couple of bits of these riffs and stuff that I like. But to your point about drop D kind of being his go-to move, there's another thing that I've noticed in a lot of Foo Fighters songs when he's writing guitar parts, that is very common and is in so many songs, and it's this kind of like ascending chord lick thing. So it sounds kind of like that is used everywhere. Off the top of my head, I can think of probably 5 songs that do almost the exact same thing, right? That's Everlong, right? Then you've got like Walk. Exact same chords. I mean, My Hero. It's this, like, he's playing octave chords and they're always ascending. I know Pretender. It's all the same thing. You hear it all over the place. I think he does it in Rope. He does it in so many songs, and it's great, but it's an instantly identifiable Foo Fighters thing. He's used it so often, and it's just one of those fun little quirky things that I've noticed about their music.
Yeah, and it works. So
Yeah, right. Don't fix it if it ain't broke, right?
yeah, so a good one to start, but we both picked because it goes back to the can. It's Good Grief.
Yes. Like I said, and I guess my preamble to this is that I'm kind of embarrassed to admit how long it took me to get into Foo Fighters. I mean, I was younger than probably the majority of the audience, but in my high school years is kind of when like Echoes was coming out. And it took until Wasting Light for me to really get into them, because back then I was a stupid kid and I was trying to like just learn shred stuff. And there's not a lot of like crazy guitar solos or like riffs, like you said, in Foo Fighters music. So I was always kind of like, it's just sort of not my scene. But when I finally took the deep dive, like once Wasting Light came along and I just totally fell down the rabbit hole, I was like, went back through the whole discography. And when I came across the first album, the sound of it is such a big part of that. I would consider it kind of a lo-fi sound. It just sort of has this kind of warm, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a little fuzzy, a little lo-fi, but that song Good Grief specifically it just has such a nostalgic sound to it. And I've tried to put my finger on exactly why, but I think it's just the chords that he used. I think it's just kind of that lush bed of riffs. There's not a whole lot of dynamic shift in that song, but it just sounds so quintessentially 90s. And for me, I don't know if it's the same for you, and I'm curious to hear why you chose it as well, but it just reminds me of being a kid in the 90s. And that's not to say that I heard it in the 90s, because I wasn't paying attention to music back then, but it was like I listen to that song and it's like I'm just, riding my bike through the neighborhood. I don't know why. I couldn't put my finger on it more than that, but I love the sound of that song.
Yeah, me too. So I think for me, the reason I chose it, and especially on this sort of theme around guitar riffs, is that when you listen to the album from start to finish, you've got like, this is a cool blah blah blah, and it's those choppy, interesting chord progressions that we talked about, and then Good Grief comes in, and you're like, this is a bit different now, because that guitar hook, it's a real earworm, and it's driving the song, and so it makes you, whatever you're doing when you're listening to the album, whether you're out walking or driving or in the gym or whatever, you kind of take a break and you go, there's something a little bit different going on now. Do you get what I mean?
And it leads really well into Floaty, which is the next track, which I also love. And that's the vibe on that album that I really resonate with the most, is kind of that more shoegazy, I guess maybe listful or kind of melancholic vibe. And that song and its position in the track list is in a perfect spot, because like you said, right out of the gate, you're punching it hard with This Is a Call and I'll Stick Around. But that lead line, it's so great. And over top of those chords, what's really interesting is this is a drop D song, but he's not just doing your standard drop D chords. He's doing this little extended, which is such a weird sound, but it works so well with that riff. I love the sound of that chord and that riff together. It just does something. It tickles my brain in the right way. And the vocals are kind of low key until they get to the chorus. And I really love that song.
Yeah, I fell foul of Barrett on that one, because I thought it was the first use of, I thought there was some modulation in there, and he was like, no, I don't think there was. And I was like, I was trying to be a bit of a smart ass, basically.
I think I would know more than you, Barrett.
he was like, I'm going to listen to that again, and he stuck it on in the studio as we were recording, and he was like, no, I'm not hearing what you're hearing. And he said it was just natural phasing between the other guitar tracks. So I was like, okay.
Are you hearing that on the intro, that part, or on the rhythm chords?
On the intro, I think.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's double tracked. I'd have to listen to it again, but I know just like the way those notes interact with each other does kind of lend itself to a little bit of a phasey. I don't know, man. It's one of those magical little lead lines that I'm like, damn it, why didn't I write that?
That's exactly what I thought, though. I thought there's a bit of phaser or something on there, because the rest of most of that record, it's just, you can tell it's just guitar into amp, and that's it, and it's that. So that's what sort of piqued my interest. I thought, this might be the first use of some kind of effect, but he's like, no, that's just natural phasing. So there you go. He was there and I wasn't, so he would know.
Well, and the thing I loved about talking to Barrett and all the content I've seen him put out, which is great. He's been doing a lot of videos recently, which is awesome. But I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm attacking him with all these like super nerdy, like tech specific questions. So like, how far away was the microphone from the amp? He's like, dude, I don't know. It was 30 years ago. Like, we just plugged in the amps and let it rip, And But he's great, man. I mean, he's such an awesome resource to have for fans to be able to reach out to and like communicate with about that stuff. And because I think we've gotten far enough away from that release now where it's like 30 years is a pretty big milestone for that album to still be relevant, or for the band to still be relevant for that long. And so, you start approaching those anniversaries and stuff, and it's just fun to kind of peel back the top layer. And especially with that album, since there's not a whole lot of personnel involved, not a whole lot of documentation about it. It's just kind of this weird, mysterious, quickly recorded album. And I love it.
Yeah, exactly, because it was done at such pace as well, and they probably just rattled through it. And you're not going to remember, oh, well, yeah, it took him a whole week to agonize over this one track, as sometimes because they did it at such pace, to be able to sort of pick out. So the other song that we both picked, and we're going to completely the other end of the catalogue now, is The Teacher. And we were just talking about it before we started recording. There ain't anything else like this in the Foo Fighters library, really, is there?
No, and it's... Yeah, the song is just, I think, such an important piece of the Foo Fighters catalog. And obviously it's very emotionally charged. It's coming off the back end of a very emotional album, right? There's a lot of weight that kind of goes into it. And at one point I was discussing it online with somebody, and they asked, do you think it would be quite as impactful if you didn't know the backstory behind like the writing of it? But I think that's just as important to consider, right? Because I think the storyline, both musically and lyrically, that song follows is just so intertwined with everything that was going on with Dave and the band at the time. And like, it just adds so much more weight to it. And I remember the first time I heard it, like we were discussing before we started recording, there have been other bands that have put out a 10-minute opus. And there's different ways this can go. I mean, is this going to be like a Bohemian Rhapsody rock opera, or is this just going to be like a slow jam that doesn't really go anywhere and just has to be, does it need to be 10 minutes long? And so when I first heard it, it's like you're just hanging on every word that he's singing. And the juxtaposition between this But Here We Are album and the last one, Medicine at Midnight, which is like, okay, fun dance party rock. But when he writes like emotionally heavy stuff, the songwriting is just so powerful. And specifically when you get to the back half of that song and it leads into that final riff, I mean, by the time that last riff comes in, it's just like, oh, it's just, I don't know. I'm having a hard time coming up with the right words to really describe it, but the feeling that you get when you listen to that is just so much weight and so heavy, and it just keeps building. And then of course they do the Abbey Road trick where they just cut it right in the middle of the riff, and it's just, you're like, oh, it's a lot.
Yeah, and it's not actually as complex as musically as you first think it is, because it kind of goes round the first half of the song. It's doing the same thing, but they just keep layering it, don't they? And builds and builds.
Right. It does, yeah. And there's plenty of great spots in there where it's, they're adding different layers and stuff, and obviously it kind of builds and gets heavier and then comes back down and stuff, and you're sort of following this journey with the music. But specifically this riff, I'll play a little bit of it for you at the end. Just, I don't know how he wrote this, and what's interesting about it is there's a capo on the 7th fret. So if you watch them play it live, he's using a double neck guitar. And he plays most of the song on the regular neck that doesn't have this capo. And I guess for non-guitar nerds, a capo is like a bar that pinches all the strings across one fret, so you can kind of play in a different key without having to retune everything. But then he switches up to this riff, and I don't, like, it's got this... It's kind of a weird meter, right? It doesn't sound like it's in 4/4 time. And especially when the drums come in and they start doing that sort of like, I don't know, like that kind of tribal beat or whatever that's going on with all the toms and everything. And it doesn't seem like it should line up, but it's just kind of this weird cascade of notes and everything. And one thing I love, especially in like the last couple rotations, is I don't know if they bring in like the synth or like a heavy bass, but it just gets huge. I mean, the low end is just building and building and building. and then it starts getting more fuzzed out and distorted, and it's just like more and more chaotic, and then it just stops. But that riff is just so like that's a great riff, man. That's a really good one.
And the funny thing is, I was lucky enough to get to see him do it live twice, and
Hmm.
so transfixed by watching Dave with that double guitar that
Yeah.
I didn't even get round to considering what Pat and Chris were doing. And you kind of like, not only have you got 3 guitars on this going on this song, you've got one of them's a double a double neck.
Uh-huh. Yeah. How much more do you how many more strings do you need on that stage? Well, and I think I watched so I got to see him play it. I got to see them play it once because I saw them at one of the baseball stadium shows. And if I remember right, I think Pat switches his guitar like once or twice during the song, which is hilarious. He's got a roadie. I think he starts playing a baritone guitar at the end, which is probably where that really low, that thick, heavy sound comes in. But um, yeah, man. Oh, what a song. It's just so powerful.
Yeah, and as you say, it's the extra layer that it gives it with the sentiment behind it, basically.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
have you heard the Song Exploder
I
episode?
did. Yeah, I was going to ask if you'd heard that yet. That's amazing. And that again, that's the kind of stuff that I love, peeling back those layers and like hearing some of the inspiration of how you came up with those parts. I guess in Dave's case how he came up with some of the lyrics and stuff, but the question that's always been in my mind since I listened to that album and that song specifically is I would love to know what the energy felt like in the room when he was recording that, right? Because he was on the drums, and I guess specifically like just being in the room watching him put the drums down for that, and as emotionally charged as it is, I can only imagine like how cathartic it must have been for him to be able to like express that through this song that I think perfectly encapsulates the feelings of going through what he went through. That's not to say I've necessarily experienced the exact same kind of loss, but you know, that's kind of a shared experience. If you lose somebody who's close to you and you just like, it's difficult to express in words, but I think the music does it so well. And I would just love to know like what that atmosphere felt like and like what it felt like for him to be able to put that out in that song.
Yeah, and from the technical point of view as well, I'd love to know where the genesis of it, when he realized, right, we're going to keep going with this, and how it kind of turned into this 10-minute opus.
I mean, not to get too spiritual and woo woo about it, but like I think, you know, if you look at it from a certain perspective, it's kind of interesting about how the whole song, right, is about the process of losing your parent, losing your mother, and it takes a long time, right? And it's like a whole process. And especially with the last lyrics being goodbye, it's like it takes a long time to get to that point, you know, to coming to terms with that. And so you can kind of look at the entire thing as you know, documenting that experience. And it takes longer than you want it to, right? I mean, and sometimes it never goes away, I guess. I'm maybe explaining this poorly, but you know, it is it's a long drawn out process that has a lot of ups and downs. And I don't know. I think you really knocked it out of the park with that one. That's a really important song.
Absolutely. So your third pick was, and so we're jumping back to the second album now. You've got Hey Johnny Park.
Yeah. Oh man. I love this song. This is one a real standout guitar riff, and it's kind of crosses the line between like a riff and a lick. If you talk to guitar players, there's licks and riffs. Riffs are usually the chugga chugga on the low strings, and licks are kind of more solo-y type stuff. And this intro. Trying to remember the first time I heard that song, and I was just like, whoa, that's so good. It's such an earworm, you know? And the chorus melody is so great. He's very, very good at choosing, you know, really interesting chord progressions and stuff. One of the other things I love about this one is in the verse, it gets quiet in the verse. And then on the turnaround, it goes. And and then there's this little bit. That's such a cool little, and he's using those little, like, I don't really know the theory behind it, but it's like a 7th or a 9th chord. It's just kind of a little bit of jazziness in there, and then he cranks up the heat, right? And that's that big chorus that's just bombastic and awesome. And yeah, that's definitely a standout one from that album.
He loves to throw a jazzy chord into the mix, just as a bit of it's like it's kind of like a George Harrison chord, because he would do that a lot, wouldn't he?
Yes. Yeah, and I was just going to say, it's funny how similar, because I'm also a huge fan of the Beatles. And one of the infuriating things about being a Beatles fan, and kind of to an extent being a Foo Fighters fan too, is there's these guys who are like, oh yeah, we don't really know anything about the theory. We just kind of play the chords that sound good and everything. We don't know what the notes are called. And like, yeah, I mean, in my case, I'm not really a theory nerd either. I don't know like all the different chord names and everything, but I also didn't write Everlong. So it's like these guys who aren't like these music scholars, and they're putting these crazy chords, and you're like, how did you come up with this? Like, where did it come from? You don't even know what it's called, but it's like this really, really cool sounding chords and everything. And then you have to remind yourself, like, well, they're the Beatles, and I'm Jeej, and I should know my place.
Great. Yeah, it's Johnny Park. It's not like a classic like lead and rhythm like split either. It's like they're sort of interlocking, aren't they? As you've kind of just demonstrated.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got a just, I mean, it's one of those hooks that gets you right from the very beginning. There's that drum fill that comes in, and then there's that big, I don't know. It's awesome, man.
Right. So my next one that I was going to go for, and it's ironic, we're having a guitar nerd out, and the song I've picked got Justin Timberlake on it, which is Make It Right.
Yep.
So I felt with this, going back to the Beatles actually, because it's a groover. And I kind of imagined, you know, when Dave gets to jam with Paul McCartney, I kind of imagined that that's the sort of thing that he'd just come up with when him and Paul are having a jam, because it's got that Paul McCartney groover, like Helter Skelter sort of thing going on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's another one. That's a great riff. You know, that is a riff based song, which, to your point, Foo Fighters don't have a lot of, and so when it comes along, it really grabs you. And that one's just such a, you know, just down and dirty riffer. But then it kind of breaks into that, like the chorus on that song. And one of the things I think that makes Concrete and Gold a really underrated album is they got very experimental with like the backing vocals and the layers in that album. I think Rami started playing a much bigger role in the band around that time, because there's a lot of synth stuff. They're playing with a lot of weird sounds. You know, this is where Greg Kurstin, the producer, kind of jumped on and started. I think he was really given a lot of room to put his influence on there, which is great. You know, I guess, again, technically for me, that album was kind of the first in the line of, you know, the most recent releases where I haven't necessarily been the biggest fan of the production. I think that album, Medicine at Midnight, and even But Here We Are to an extent, all kind of suffered from a little bit of overcompression. But I was just listening to Concrete and Gold today, getting ready for this. For that song particularly, I think it fits the vibe, because it's fuzzy and like in your face. But yeah, another really great riff. And there's some really interesting stuff going on in the chorus where they kind of break it down and they add some, I guess, Justin Timberlake harmonies in there.
Yeah, it's gritty as well, isn't it? There's some really gritty sort of fills in that song.
Yeah, there's that one drum fill where I think Taylor hits like 30 toms. He's just like a Neil Peart sort of thing, and then it ends with that big synth hit or whatever.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
I will say, actually, there is a Concrete and Gold. There's a bit of recency bias with me with this one, because my last episode was with Jesse Green, who played on that album. So I was listening to that album quite a bit in the build up to that, doing that interview, just to kind of relive the bits that she was playing on, and the sort of context of the album and stuff. So that one probably snuck in as a little bit of recency bias, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
But Still a great
Yeah,
riff.
I just listened to that episode, by the way. She was fantastic. She's so sweet.
Yeah, so cool.
That's
Yeah,
great.
really cool. So the next one you went for was Low.
Yes, Low. Oh man. That yeah, the front half of One by One is a pretty dirty, greasy sounding album. I think with this song and the other song Have It All from that record, you can really hear the Queens of the Stone Age influences seeping into Dave's subconscious.
I was literally going to say it can't be a coincidence because it was 2002, right? So he was doing these Queens of the Stone Age songs for the Death period around there. It can't be a coincidence that that's come out in this song.
Yeah, everything from like the backing vocals, the way the song is sung, right? I mean, the melody and kind of how the voice is a little lower in sort of that crooning range that Josh usually sticks with. And I mean, the lyrics are a little raunchy, but no, I love the back and forth in that riff, right? There's the one guitar that's doing the, and then you got, I like that back and forth. There's one part in that song that I totally love, a little detail that I always catch when I listen to it, and it's in the bridge. And I think there's a guitar solo going on, something like that. But the guitar underneath, and I think the bass plays this line, they do this little... Wait. Something like that. It's just those little details and stuff in there that are so groovy and awesome. And the drums, of course, that is just such a all-around, well-rounded out, riff rocker. Very groovy, very sludgy and gross.
I just watched you play it there, and reminding me as well. There's a lot of downstrokes in that, which is a guitar player trying to play live. It's not the most comfortable, is it?
Yes, that's one. And I guess I didn't touch on this earlier, but for your listeners, so I also play in a Foo Fighters tribute band, and that's one of the songs that we learned. And every time we play it, our bass player is like, God, my forearm is just burning up because it's so much, just keeping it going on that low string. And it's a workout on the drums too, man. I mean, that song's all over the place.
Well, it's interesting you say that because you've probably seen the Shane Hawkins Q&A that he did. And obviously it's been popularly known that Taylor's favourite song was Aurora, but his favourite song to play, Shane revealed, was actually Low. I
believe it.
Yeah, because it's a lot of fun to, that and Run, probably the two most fun songs if you're a drummer of well-known Foo Fighters songs anyway.
Yeah, I feel bad for our drummer though too, because I know, and it was probably the same thing for Taylor, but like, those are the really fun ones to play. But I look back there whenever we play, because we do pretty long songs, long sets, just like the Foo Fighters, and Everlong has to be the last song at the end of the night every time, right? And I'll look back there, and we've been playing for 2 hours, and our poor drummer, who's an awesome drummer by the way, but he's just like trying to do that hi-hat part, and he's like, you gotta give me a break, man.
Yeah, you've got to be physically fit to play those songs on the drums.
Yeah, oh, big time. Yeah.
So next up, I was going to go a bit more niche, but I couldn't avoid this one, and I've gone for Stacked Actors.
Yes.
And
I'm curious. I'm curious to know your thoughts on it. What was the reasoning for picking this one?
Because it's just pure, that riff, just pure violence. It's like Wolf to as an album opener as well in that context when you go, whew. Because obviously the singles that had come out, Would Learn to Fly, had come out before the album, and it's quite anthemic in a way. And so to put the album on, and you're like, that blows your speakers off, and you're like, that's how to make it impact at the start. But also rewatching the Wembley version clinched it for me as well, because that is absolute brutal, and they make that go on for about 10 or 12 minutes. The Wembley Stadium version, I'm sure you've seen.
I think does that have a Hawkins drum solo in it? The Wembley one?
Yeah,
that's where he does his drum spot. Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the songs I got. So the first time I saw them was on the Wasting Light tour, and they played that one, and I was like, "Oh my god," cuz they just, they tear into this jam section every time they play that, and it's so much fun. But yeah, definitely that sound, and part of the reasoning behind that sound, I don't know if you've ever played this on your guitar, but it's in drop A tuning. I actually, hold on one sec. I have my other guitar. Specifically because I knew this was on your list, I have a guitar that is specifically set up for this that I bring to every one of our tribute band shows, and I play it for one song, in the same way Dave does.
What guitar is that? Is it like a Firebird or something?
Yeah, this is a Firebird Studio, which is a very similar model to the one Dave uses when they play it. He was using these Firebird guitars kind of around the like the In Your Honor era. Which is cool. It's really thin and super lightweight, which is nice.
I think Chris might have used one for a bit as well.
Yeah, that's right. Chris has had a few of these. I think he played one in the Wembley. But yeah, if you watch like the Wembley performance, he's playing a blue Firebird like this. But so for this song, the tuning is standard. I guess it's like an A minor. Right, all the strings are the same, but your top string, your thickest string, is tuned all the way down to an A. So if you think of your guitars from the thickest to the thinnest string, it usually goes E, A, D, G, B, E. But they've tuned this top string all the way down, past drop D, past drop C, all the way down to an A. So it's actually an octave of the next string. So these are the same notes. But in order to get your guitar to stay in tune that far down, you need really, really thick strings, because otherwise it's just like a spaghetti noodle. It's just flopping all over the place. But that's the reason that riff sounds so insane, is because it's tuned so low. It's almost a baritone guitar, but it's only that one string. So the main riff. And he adds that little harmonic. So cool. Such a cool sounding riff. So like angular and disjointed and sliding all over the place. And then when he gets into the verse, right, it's just regular chords. And it's slinky and kind of weird and everything. And then right back into the... Oh man, what a sound. And what's interesting, like you said, that's the first track on the album. And then beyond that, like the guys in the band themselves have described that as like their AM gold record. So there's a lot of like kind of low key, like, I don't want to use the term yacht rock, but like, you get to a song like Headwires on that album, and it's just this kind of like low key Police sounding, almost a little new wave. And there's not really anything else, maybe aside from Breakout, that sounds anywhere close to Stacked Actors, and that's the one they put on the beginning of that album, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, and because you've got like Next Year's probably one of the most delicate sounding songs you could get, and it's on the same album.
Well, and Aurora's on there too. I mean, just these like real nice, beautiful ballads. There's another one in there somewhere, I think, that's like a real, Generator kind of. Yeah, and then Stacked Actors is what kicks it all off.
So your next one, then, you've got a real deep cut. Do you want to introduce that one?
Oh man, okay. I'm telling you guys right now, I don't want to detract anyone from listening to this clearly engaging podcast. But if you haven't yet, please pause right now and go look up the song "Better Off," which was a bonus track on Wasting Light. To this day, I do not understand why they didn't include it on the track list, because it is one of my favorite Foo Fighters songs. It's the most like the Beatles that the Foo Fighters have ever sounded. It's got this very like... I don't know what you'd call that, kind of a staccato riff going through the verses and everything that's just got this kind of bouncy Beatles sound, right? It's such a good song, and it came from the Wasting Light sessions, that era, and so like I feel like he was really at his peak during that period for his songwriting. The lyrics are great. I love the riff. I love the chorus, but specifically there is a guitar part in the bridge that is this super groovy riff, and like the majority of the song is pretty straight. It's this kind of boppy like... kind of that sound. And then he goes into this riff in the bridge that's like a swung 6/8 or like a swung triplet feel. And it's this. And then right back into the. What a cool sound, man. I wish they would tap into that a little bit more because he writes it so well. But that one riff that comes in there, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm along for the ride. And I wish it was on the album. It's so good. I wish more people knew about it. But I think it is on Spotify, so you should be able to hear it there.
But it's so bright and poppy, and you could imagine them playing that to 40, 50,000 people in a stadium and just being really joyous, couldn't you?
Oh yeah. Well, and even the intro riff is just like it's just this cool. I don't know, man. I really love it. I should have prepared more adjectives for this discussion. I just keep sitting like, yeah, man, it's rad.
Yeah, but you've gone above and beyond by actually playing the riffs themselves, so I think you can be excused for the.
Well, I had to bring some kind of audio assistance here.
No, it's great. It's great. And then my last one was, it's probably some people might think this is a bit of a rant, a bit of a strange choice, but I've gone for The Line.
Another Concrete and Gold song.
Yeah, again, possibly the recency bias, but what I just love about it is that I grew up with more of an indie alternative music taste, I guess. And so a lot of bands, especially like British bands, they'd have like a real like anthem sort of engine to their songs. And I love the way the guitar riff in that, it just sits underneath and drives the song along and becomes a real earworm. And then again in the chorus, you've got that chimey bit, which is very Beatles, like, you know, it's getting better, sort of just a single note, chimey, very simple. And I just love it.
Yeah, that one, it sounds like it's got a lot of Chris Shiflett, especially that chimey bit that you're talking about. I think that's kind of right in his wheelhouse, is adding those, you know, more pretty, I guess, kind of cleaner chords in the choruses to add that extra layer of depth. But that song in particular, and I just listened to it again today, it's one of those tunes, kind of like a Learn to Fly, where you put it on, you're like, that's a Foo Fighters song. Like if you had to sum up the Foo Fighters sound, that's what it is, right? It's kind of a mid-tempo rocker. It's got an upbeat, uplifting, positive sound to it. Like that's your quintessential Foo Fighters sound. And that's a really good choice. Very easy to sing along to. The only detractor for that song, and again, it's something that I've mentioned before, is like the production on that album. I think the song suffers a little bit because it's just very compressed, and like it's kind of one of those wall of sound songs where you got a lot of guitars going around, you got a big kind of drum part that's washing on the cymbal, and I think maybe a slightly different mix on that I would like a little more, but definitely on that album it's a standout track. It's one of the better songs on that record, and I think it was a single too, right?
Yes, it was. It's the sort of song I would love to not only listen to but to play along to as well. Just from that. Yeah, and didn't you say classic Foo Fighters, like big-hearted?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I guess. Okay, so I did have one honorable mention, which I didn't mention in our discussion, but I have to touch on it a little bit, which is, because we don't have any songs from this album, is the opening track on In Your Honor. And that album, I can't believe I didn't pick anything from that record, because especially on the front half, the first side of that, there's so many good guitar riffs. But, songs like DOA, No Way Back is so good. Free Me is an awesome song. But the title track, In Your Honor, I am so bummed that I wasn't into the Foo Fighters enough when they were touring that record, because to get to hear that is such a perfect opener for a concert. And to get to hear them play the song In Your Honor that comes in with that guitar. I mean, talk about anthemic. That is just arena rock incarnate. And I've seen a couple of videos of them playing it, and I know why they don't play it, because it's an absolute bear to try and sing that live. I mean, he's just barking for 4 minutes, but it's such a good song. Like, I can only imagine being in the middle of an arena when they kick off that song, and like, that's another great one. I had to mention that one.
But that album had some great songs that didn't make it too on the rock disc.
Yeah, what were
It was Spill.
Bill,
One
that's
of
right. Oh. So I had a question for you, and I know we're probably getting close to time here, but so obviously, I mean, you've been a fan for quite a while. Have you ever had the chance to meet any of the members in person?
I haven't. No, the closest I've been was Shifty's solo gig. He played here in
Oh,
Birmingham
cool.
last March, and it was a really small, intimate gig. So you could pretty much walk up to the barrier. He's stood like, there's no security. Well, there was security, but not just a couple of guys on the rail. And he was probably 5 meters from us, and he did do a bit of a meet and greet before the show, but we missed him. We didn't get in time. We didn't get there in time. No, so I haven't. What about
Well,
you?
all I would tell you is, I mean, give it time, because I'm a little envious that you've gotten this podcast up and running. I think it's awesome what you're doing, and I'm sure, after a little bit of time, if you keep at it and keep up with the consistency, I'll bet you'll probably land one of those guys on there. I think that'd be awesome to get them on. I have been very fortunate. I've had a couple of brief encounters with Chris. A good friend of mine was producing his podcast, Shred with Shifty, and so there were a couple of small interactions I got to have with him. And then before,
Was this your TikTok thing, the where he played along with your
funny, hilarious story about this. So there's a guy actually in town, and if you know where I am, I'm very remote. I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's a guy in my town, actually, a friend of mine, who was producing his podcast, and obviously he was doing it remote because it was a video podcast like this. But he knew, I mean, I'm kind of like the obnoxious Foo Fighters guy in my town, and so he's like, "Hey, here's the deal. I'm working on this podcast with Chris." So I would kind of chat with him and be like, "Hey, make sure you tell Shifty, blah, 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 blah," or whatever. And it was kind of this joking back and forth relationship or whatever. And then, so like, I just had I stopped by this guy's office and I had a brief chat with Chris on like a Zoom call like this. And I was like, "Hey, what's up, man? Like, I love your band," that kind of thing. Very, very short, right? And then like a couple weeks later, I had posted that TikTok and he responded to that. And so then like, the guy who does his podcast got on a call with him and is like, "That's the guy, right? Like, that's this guy who lives in my town that has this Foo Fighters tribute band who's like totally obsessed with you guys. Like, that's him." And he had no idea. He's like, "What?" Like, it's total small world sort of thing. But no, it was great. And I did get a chance very briefly to meet Chris and Nate and Pat before their concert last summer. Or I guess, was that 2 years ago? Yeah, it was last summer, I think. When they were doing that baseball stadium tour, I got a chance to meet them before the show, which was awesome. I mean, they're just super nice guys. They're super cool. And like, the worry for me being such a super fan for so long is I'm like, I'm going to show up and they'll be like, "Who's this creep? Like, get this guy out of here." But no, they're very sweet. Pat Smear is like the coolest dude ever. And I was like, I can't believe I'm actually talking to Pat. He's so cool. But haven't met Dave yet. That's kind of the one, that's the end goal. I always joke that the ultimate goal is to stage the meet cute with Grohl. But he keeps kind of a low profile these days, and he's a little hard to run into, but it's been fun. And that's the thing. It's like putting out all this content just about stuff I'm interested in, right? I mean, doing these videos about the gas can amp and stuff like that. You interact with the fan community long enough, and you start to interact and meet with the people that are actually associated with the band, which is really cool. I mean, like talking to guys like Barrett and getting to talk to Shiflet and those guys and stuff. And it's a very welcoming and interactive community, which I think makes it so fun to be a fan of the band.
So lastly, before we wrap up, do you want to tell us anything about your music that you've got coming up? Because I know you write and record stuff. You've got the Fresh Fighters thing going on as well, and you've got your channel.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to signpost to check out a bit further?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny with the whole Fresh Fighters thing, because originally that project, that tribute band, started as like kind of a one night only sort of deal. We're like, because a bunch of my friends and I were like, well, we're fans of the Foo Fighters. We'll learn a dozen songs and we'll do one night at a bar, and just do Foo Fighters night. And then we learned all the songs. We're like, well, shoot, it doesn't make sense to only do this once. So we booked a couple more gigs, and that was like 8 years ago, and we're still doing it. So I've been all over the place doing that, which is a lot of fun. But it's one of the great things about covering that band is the songs are so fun, and there's just a positive mentality around all of it. And like, I'm so lucky that I'm in a band with these really great guys. And so we've been doing that so long, and then we're like, I mean, we love playing the Foo Fighters stuff, and it's fun to book those gigs, but we started thinking like, hey, what if we just started writing our own and like doing an original band kind of along with that? So I have a lot of my own material that I've been putting out like on Spotify, and you can find it under Jeej. But there's this new band that I'm working on with the guys from Fresh Fighters called Eastland, and we're getting ready to record some new stuff. And we're just kind of playing around. I mean, we're all just dads with kids, we're not, our illusions of grandeur are slowly fading away from us. But we're planning on releasing some new original stuff. So I'd say keep an eye out for that. And then I'm always like trying to put out fun videos and stuff on my YouTube channel that are all about guitars and Foo Fighters or whatever I'm interested in at the moment.
A big thanks to Jeej for that little masterclass in Foo Fighters guitar parts. And if you're into this techie kind of stuff, then I'd highly recommend you check out his YouTube channel, especially the video about the can with Barrett Jones, which we talked about there. Once again, thank you for listening to Foo's Files. Please do leave us a 5-star rating if you're enjoying the show, as it really helps us out. In the meantime, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.